It was in 1891 the poor farm family of Sarah and Jacob Hindus in the Soviet Union welcomed another son. They named him Maurice. Jacob and Sarah would actually have 11 children, along with the 6 Jacob had with his first wife, who was Sarah's cousin, before she died. Maurice's early childhood was a rough one, to say the least, full of mud, hard work, and starvation. Their neighbors had a child every single year, but only one survived past their 2nd birthday, and even he was killed in France during World War I. Maurice's younger sister died after falling from a woodpile and hitting her head. Then his father died from malnutrition, then 2 other sisters from typhoid. With her eldest sons in the army and no grown man in the house, Sarah then very reluctantly and illegally started distilling and selling vodka to keep them all alive. Maurice was her only child she insisted would get an education instead of a job. Anything, his mother said, to save at least one of you from the village mud and the village darkness. In 1905, Sarah fled the Soviet Union with her youngest children, including Maurice, who was 14 years old at the time, and came to New York City, in a country they had only recently learned existed. Maurice became an errand boy in the city, making $3 a week, but his American dream was to work on an American farm. He was a voracious learner but detested city life and knew just enough broken English to read a small advertisement on a bulletin board one day that said "Farm Hand Wanted, Upstate." Without telling his mother, the now 17-year-old Maurice was on a train before sunset. He arrived at the North Brookfield train station the very next morning and went to meet his new employer, James Moore. Although Jim wasn't the easiest guy to work for, he taught young Maurice about victuals and the new farming methods that were so different from what he was used to in the Soviet Union. "For a year, my people didn't know where I was," he admitted in a later interview. In just 3 years, Maurice worked his way through all the grade levels at the North Brookfield Union School. He then applied at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, but was rejected due to a lack of credits. Colgate University in Hamilton, however, accepted him, and he walked there every day for classes, a distance of 8 miles each way. After graduation in 1915, Maurice went on to become a lecturer, world traveler, and Russian correspondent during World War II, and furthered his education at Harvard. He also wrote 20 books, one of which was an autobiography called Green Worlds, and talked about his beloved North Brookfield, except he had changed the names to protect the innocent, even calling North Brookfield Mount Brookville. An aging Maurice made many trips from his home in New York City to North Brookfield as often as he could, even spending the last weekend of his life here before passing away in 1969 at the age of 78. During his later years here, he became good friends with my great-grandparents, even giving them his Colgate senior portrait. Maurice dedicated his book Green Worlds to the memory of his friend Jim, the most irascible friend, the most sensible teacher, the most human Americanizer I have ever known. Jim lived out his days on his little hop farm across the road from the cemetery before passing away in 1926 at the age of 85. Years later, Maurice stood looking at the burned ruins of Jim's barn with tears in his eyes and wondered what would have become of him had his friend James Moore not posted the advertisement that changed his life.